The Xbox One and PS4 consoles were both released in November of 2013. By February of 2014, PC gamers already had a superior $120 graphics card option in the GTX 750 Ti. Fast forward to today, 2.5 years later. Now for that same price point, they have options like the RX 460, the GTX 950, and the upcoming 1050 and 1050 Ti. Mention that all of the links and everything that you see here is listed in the description below. If you want to support me, you can use the Amazon links that you find there. Every time I do a PC build like this, I go through about 50 different articles and then present, 5 to 10 here for you guys in the form of evidence. Again, you can find those in the description. I want to give credit where credit is due, so be sure to go take a look at that. Now let's move on to the meat and potatoes of the discussion, which is the graphics card. At this price point, there's a lot of graphics cards that are very similar on the R7 370, the GTX 950, and the RX 460. So which one do you want to go with? Well, the truth is, depends. It depends on rebates, and it depends on what you want to do. The GTX 1050 and 1050 Ti are rumored to be released in October, and this could really flip the $90 to $150 graphics card world upside down. Let's take a look here. The GTX 1050, I feel like, will fall in line with the prices that the 950 and the RX 460s of the world are right now. As you can see, the 1050 Ti has the same amount of CUDA cores, but look at the base and boost clock. This thing's going to destroy the GTX 950. So most likely NVIDIA will release this at about $150 price point. That's just my opinion. You guys can take it or leave it or whatever. My thoughts are that the GTX 1050 will outperform the GTX 950 at about the same price point. So if you're willing to wait for that, then that's something to consider. Alright, moving on, and if you're not waiting for a 1050 or 1050 Ti in October to kind of see things through, let's take a look at the RX 460 and compare it to the GTX 950. This is the same post that I brought up in my video on the best graphics cards for the money. You can see right here. I'll link to it for you. One thing I will say about these benchmarks is that if they added more DirectX 11 games, the performance would be skewed to the GTX 950. The GTX 950 performs substantially better in DirectX 11 games. Now, moving forward on DirectX 12, it looks like the RX 460 will have a bit of an advantage, but again, moving forward in DirectX 12, we'll also have the 1050 to compare it to. So I just wanted to put this in front of you so that you could see that even though the GTX 950 is now a year older, it's definitely similar or better, or whatever conclusion you want to draw in terms of performance. Okay, so they're very similar in performance, but what about power consumption? Well, here's an article from Legit Reviews. I wish the GTX 950 was on here, but it shows you the peak gaming and average idle for the RX 460 down here at the bottom compared to many other GPUs, so you can go and have a look. I will say that after reading a bunch of different articles, power consumption in gaming is about the same for the RX 460 and the GTX 950. So if you're purchasing the GTX 950 or you want to go with the RX 460 this month, then what's the best deal? What's the best manufacturer to go with? What's the best model number? Well, right now, I like this Asus Mini GTX 950. Super small profile, could fit in a lot of different kind of builds that you guys want to do, and great performance. That's $30, that has a $30 rebate this month to make it only $90. What a killer deal. Also, if you want to go with an RX 460, I like this one from Gigabyte, the RX 460 WindForce, which is just $99.99 after a $20 rebate on Newegg this month. A little bit about the overclocking potential of the RX 460 and the GTX 950 for those of you that want to do that. Really, the RX 460 has very little overclocking potential. Here you can see a stock RX 460. Here's a factory overclocked RX 460. It just gets one more frame. And then here's one that TechSpot overclocked themselves. This is in the Division, and as you can kind of see, the pattern continues down here as we check out every single other game. You just get very little from overclocking the RX 460. It is what it is. If you're not planning on overclocking, that probably doesn't mean much to you. Here's an article that was written a while ago on the GTX 950 showing a factory overclocked GTX 950 versus this is BitTech overclocking it themselves, and as you can see, they're getting more than 10% extra performance out of it. So again, if you're going to overclock, I probably would prefer the GTX 950 right now. All right, we spent a lot of time talking about graphics cards. So for this build, let's jump into the rest of it, starting out with the CPU. For the $300 build, I like the Pentium G3258, still a great performer in the $70 price range, great overclocker, even with the stock cooler, and you can do it on this MSI H81 motherboard. You can look it up. A lot of people have done it, so keep that in mind. If you're thinking about purchasing a Hyper 212 Evo or something like that, a cooler, aftermarket CPU cooler, you might as well upgrade to like the i3-6100 or the FX8320 instead. Now looking at our $400 build, the big question here is, hey, should I go with the 2-core i3-6100 or the FX8320? And I want to bring up an article from TechSpot here. Talked about it before, and this article is now about a year old, but it's very valuable because it takes a GTX 960 across a few different games and shows us, you know, a processor like the Skylake i3-6100 that I would recommend to you in a variety of games alongside the FX8320 stock and the FX8320E overclocked. So take a look here. As you can see, the FX8320E is not a good performer out of the gate. If you want performance out of it, you are going to need to overclock, so keep that in mind. And even when you overclock it, it's not necessarily going to do better in every single game. As you can see here, it clearly wins, but you know, going down the list here, it doesn't win in every single game. So which one do I like? Well, personally, I like to go with the newer platform. So unless you're going to need a lot of different cores, you're going to be doing a lot of rendering, things like that, I would recommend the i3-6100 over the FX8320E here. You just have a newer platform, you're going with Skylake, you know, you're just sticking with the more modern option, and that's what I usually prefer to do. Run you through the rest of the build. First of all, for hard drive, we're going with a cheap 500 gigabyte hard drive from Seagate here for the $300 build. Personally, if it were me, I might even go for a 120 gigabyte solid state drive here and then just try to get a hard drive from elsewhere when I could and just manage my space. I really can't even build a computer without a solid state drive anymore. That's just me. So definitely consider that. You can get the ADATA that I've shown here in the $400 build, 120 gigabyte version for $40 versus this. I think this was around $30. So if you want to go that direction, that's definitely something to consider. As you can see, the $400 build, there's no hard drive here. We're just going to go with the 240 gigabyte solid state drive. One of the benefits of having a PC and having access to Steam is that if you have a game that you're not playing anymore, you can uninstall it. If you decide to play it a few years down the road, you can just download it again and reinstall it. So it's not too hard to manage a computer with 240 gigabytes. You can have a few of your favorite games, your OS, and then that's about it. But you know, it's still very manageable, and you can always use an external hard drive or just jack one from an older computer or whatever you want to do. Moving on to the case, I like the Xeon MATX case here a lot. First of all, it has USB 3.0 headers. It's a fairly good case. I've used it a lot before, so it's a cheap case that I'm familiar with and okay with. This Antec case is also good, a little bit more sturdy, but it does not have the USB 3.0 headers in there. So even on the $400 build, you might want to consider the Xeon case if you're going to want to go with a cheap case. For RAM, we're going to get 8 gigabytes for both builds. Keep in mind, with the $400 build here, we're using a Skylake CPU along with this H110 motherboard, and this will only support up to 2133 megahertz RAM. That's why we're going with this inexpensive Crucial kit here. This kit specifically can be overclocked to 2400 megahertz. I've seen it done, and so if you ever move from this motherboard to another one, you could certainly use it in that way, or just sell it as a piece with the computer later on. Kingston HyperX Fury for the $300 build, cheap RAM. I mean, DDR3 now you can get like 8 gigs for 30 bucks. I mean, how great is that? For power supply, we're going with probably, I'd consider it a tier 3 power supply in the EVGA 430 watt. Usually this thing can get as cheap as $20 in a particular month. So you know, it's just one of it's like Cooler Masters Builder Series or whatever. It's not like a super reliable power supply that's going to last you 10 years, but will it last you 3 to 5 years? Absolutely, most likely. And if it doesn't, then you know, you only spent a few dollars on it and you're not risking a huge, big, expensive system. Okay, that's all I have to say for this build today. If you guys want to support me, support the channel, the best way to do it is go down to the description and use our Amazon links. These Amazon affiliate links give us a small kickback and really help us to run this channel so we can keep doing what we're doing. Again, love that this GTX 950 Mini is on rebate for $90. Not sure how long that's going to last, didn't really look into that, but certainly would be the one I'd probably go with if I was purchasing today. But you know what? By next month, that's probably all going to change, and that's why we got to talk about it regularly. So if you like this kind of thing, don't forget to press that like and subscribe button. You can feel free to ask me any question in the comment section here below or on my website, top10gamer.com. I hope you guys are having a great day, and we'll see you next time.